Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the August meeting of the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission. Thank you to the town of Culpeper for use of the Economic Development Center today. Much appreciated. Please join me for a pledge of the allegiance of our. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Didn't we add Dolly Parton to that somehow? Yeah.
Soon we have a forum, but I'd like to welcome our new members from the town of Warrenton. Council member Larry Kovalik, if I said that wrong. Town manager Judson Rex, and from Culpeper, special projects administrator Laura Love. Welcome. Love that. Lovely, love that. Lovely, love it. Sorry, I'm late. Just you don't get along. With the approval of the agenda, are there any changes to the agenda distributed?
I'll move approval. No, second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public comment. Are there any members of the public present?
Evelyn, do you want to address the?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Presentations and special recognition. We had, I was hoping that we would have somebody from BASEM. You can help me with that.
I want to say it's BASEM, but every time I call, leave a message, I get the pronunciation wrong. So. And
the reason being, as there are some documents that was brought to my attention, as well as I'm a big fan of Micro, and I was watching his podcast with Vice President J.D. Vance, and it's July 7th, if anybody's interested. But the discussion came to AI, data centers, and power. And I sent a graph to Patrick. Basically, they said since 1996, the United States has not increased its power generation, whereas China has 3 times that since that same time period. And the quote that got my interest from JD was Trump administration is deregulating and recommending building more power plants. That's their goal. So although I know we don't like the nasty looking power lines that are threatening us currently, all of this is leading me to believe that this is just the start of something bigger from needs in the state of Virginia as well as the nation. So I was hoping that they could join us. They don't take a side, it's just factual on the power issue. And we didn't get them this month, but hopefully next month.
We're gonna, yeah. So, and for those of you that I feel like I mentioned this at every meeting, with the Bingo podcast, Joe Lurch has just released one where he spoke with 2 of the gentlemen that worked on this, the report that I think I shared in the email, but it's this electric power in Virginia, the essentials for decision makers. Grab it at the end and pull it up. So, you know, the hope is, and I think what I found in trying to communicate and reach out to them by email and phone in the last couple of weeks is that they're basically a one-person organization with an executive director in Richmond, and it's made up of you know, either academics or people that are involved in science, engineering, medicine, as the acronym states. So goal would be for the October mission meeting, which is the 28th, to have them available to talk through their process, what they've learned, because again, if you looked into this document, I think it does take a fairly unbiased approach to just saying, here's what we're seeing and here's what's likely coming and how are we going to, doesn't say how we're going to address that, but kind of gives a sense of what the future may hold in terms of demand and load and everything like that. So
And I think it plays into the lobbying conversation, what we're focused on this year, because if we're going to do clean energy in the state of Virginia and we need all this energy, that's a lot of solar panels or wind farms or whatever, which I do not like the idea of, but I just think it's best that we all know what is potentially coming, so we can hopefully find ways to fight it, so we choose, if we choose. This year, yes, sir.
Are they looking for like a holistic approach to this, traditional, coal, whatever, gas, nuclear, things like that, or is it just green?
I think it's everything. In the state of Virginia, I'm not sure coal is happening, or if it is, it's a lot less than it used to be, because of the green energy. But Patrick, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think the report itself, I think that it gets into some of the potential options, but it's not saying here's what we have to do in terms of assigning percentages or anything along those lines. I think it's really we want to make sure people understand that, the needs are going to be there or already there. How we address them is going to be up to, probably a lot of different mechanisms rather than one particular. But I don't think it ties into saying, it's got to be wind or solar only. I think I know there's references to nuclear and other power generation.
Has China been primarily hydroelectric? I know they were building a lot of dams there. So
There were a lot of coal in the earlier decade.
yeah, earlier they switching over.
There's a great link, maybe we can just send out that. I found by Googling, the article or the map graph that JD referenced. And, there's a lot of information out there about worldwide, what energy is being used by what countries and how they're generating, and, it's interesting and scary for me at the same time, because I like the way our area of the state looks.
I think the other thing with committing myself to more work, obviously, but within 2 months, I think we can pull up more information together as well. It's not just saying, hey, we're gonna have them come talk about this, but also give some.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Let's see. Yeah, that saves us all kinds of time. There are 5 items on the consent agenda. Anyone wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? If
Don't take my spot.
Oh, that's fine.
Are you sure?
We can make more room here.
I'm good.
yeah, no, thanks. If there's nothing you'd like to pull, if someone would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Executive Director's report, Patrick.
Yep, I'm gonna take back some of those minutes that we saved here. Try to be brief, but have several things that I want to reference here. First is thanks to all of you that have communicated back on the annual meeting. So October 7th, at Spoon and Spindle in Town of Orange, Secretary of Ag and Forestry Katie Brazier is our keynote. Should be a good another good annual meeting. I'm looking forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. Also, please share the word not only with fellow council or board members, but just people that in the community that may be interested. We will probably within the next 2 weeks be able to announce the leadership award winners. That's always something that helps draw additional people in as well. But that will be coming out the next couple of weeks. We've also got and it's in your packet, but on the 15th of September, and I think at the last meeting I said at Old House, which is where it has historically been, but this year the Regional Transportation Collaborative, their volunteer recognition event, it's actually at Old Trade Brewery, so still in Culpeper County, a little bit closer, right off Route 29 there at Brand Station, or Olympus. So they've got sort of the same setup though, in terms of having music and just a celebration of the volunteer drivers and others as well. So if you're interested and you want to attend that, you can let me know, and I'm happy to get you on your list there too. But there's also in the packet, RSVP by email. Those 2 events last year, they were on back-to-back nights, so we've done much better in terms of spreading them out this year. Go to the twice a year, I give you all a financial account summary, and just want to kind of go through quickly, just for certainly for new members, but also others that haven't seen this for 6 months or longer. Really, this is the point of providing this is just to give a sense of where the overall commission finances are, and so it's divided up into what we've called our operating accounts, which is, you know, with Atlantic Union, checking and money market, and the sort of variance that those go through during the fiscal year in this case. Our reserve accounts are all with the Virginia Investment Pool, and that has been the case for almost 10 years now, since 2017. About 4 or 5 years ago, the commission directed taking, it used to be split between the liquidity fund, which is the NAV fund here, and the long-term bond fund. 4 years ago, commission asked just put them in the liquidity fund, with interest rates. We do kind of keep track of that staff-wise, but we don't make any movement between that. We can certainly bring that back to you all if there is a direction or a suggestion. One item there was an error in the document here. The net movement between operating and VIP accounts over the course of the fiscal year was actually 36,000 to the VIP accounts, not 100,000. So we did manage to put a little bit more into the again, what we sort of term as our reserve accounts, but not as much as was stated in the memo. And then the big thing, and I think I mentioned this at an earlier meeting, but just to kind of give you a sense of how our cash flow and kind of year-to-year work. So you can see, you know, typically our highest amounts, we have a ceiling usually in the first quarter, and that's because of local dues payments, the first quarter or two of the General Assembly funding, and then because of the Transportation Collaborative and the Farm to School program, foundation funding that comes in at the beginning of the year as a chunk. So we typically see a peak in first quarter or September, October timeframe. The biggest thing here is just to kind of go back to December, January, and February, where you see, you know, lower amounts than the previous 1 year or 2 year. And that was almost entirely as a result of because of the federal shutdown and delays in reimbursements for several of our programs, where we floated that cash for that amount of time until it came back and we were reimbursed for it. So that's pretty rare. That was sort of hopefully a one-time thing, but that was the reason for that. And then when we look at the 10-year balances, we've started to see, you know, some higher, and again, that's because of the foundation and other sort of one-time fund resources where we see some higher peaks that then we kind of draw down on as the rest of the fiscal year or calendar year goes. But we continue to trend in a good direction. And at some point, I think, you know, we can have a discussion of at what point are we comfortable with the amount that we sort of see we're at, and then how do we start to use some of those reserve funds if we want to, or we just keep kind of growing that balance.
Are any of those reserve funds designated for a particular purpose?
No, I mean, I think we do track, you know, I think the numbers that show up in the, like in the chart here, it's not, you know, this isn't entirely unrestricted, but I would say on average over the last 12 months, this is probably about between 80 and 90% unrestricted. We do have, you know, especially if we move the path over that specific for a program that's obviously restricted to that use. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight specifically, and it's also in here, and I would encourage you if you have time, you know, afterwards, the Foothills Housing Network, for which the commission as the lead agency did kind of create this point in time count report. We've had our staff and others kind of present to you all. I didn't feel that was necessary this year, but I wanted to make sure that you saw that information and that you know, if you do have questions, that you can either come to me or you can go directly to Rebecca Wareham, who's our COC coordinator with those questions. But you know, in general, what I would say this winter, what we saw was going down to the numbers there. 219 total individuals that meet the HUD definition of homelessness that were counted in the region. And I remind you that the HUD definition does not include people that are couch surfing, staying with friends, paying for their own hotel room. If they are in a hotel room that's paid by an agency or a nonprofit organization, they do meet the definition. But so there are differences in between how we count them. And so we feel that while that number 219 is, you know, roughly in line with what we've seen in past years, the number is, you know, people certainly that are vulnerable to homelessness is higher than that. And it's something that we continue to try to figure out the best way of, you know, not necessarily getting the exact right count, but communicating that the number of unsheltered homeless is not just what we're looking at, who we're serving through Foothills Housing Network. I think the biggest things here that I want to highlight are you know, the number of individuals that are part of that count that do meet that definition that have a self-identified disability, whether that's physical, mental development or medical. We've seen a growing number of the aging population that are experiencing homeless. So you can see about a third of the count were over 55 this year, with about 12% over 65. There's a mixture of households with children and singles or you know married households without children in them that we've seen, and you can kind of see the here the numbers here on the age range. So 5 to 17 is the highest amount in terms of the overall number, and where I would say those numbers largely come from emergency shelters. So off your family shelter services in the town of Warrenton, but then the transitional housing that's offered not only by that program by Family Shelter Services, but also Community Touch, and then the emergency shelter in Culpeper as well, that's operated by Chaz, Culpeper Housing and Shelter Services. You can see the breakdown by county, and so you've got again Culpeper and Fauquier as the highest. We did have it was 3 adults in Madison counted this year, and you can see the numbers in orange, like with 11 adults and 7 children.
Did we not participate or not have?
No, Rappahannock participated, and I will give Ms. Crooks, your DSS director. She is very good about being participatory and saying we are looking through our cases and working with those to see. For those of you that don't know, the point in time count is tied to a single night in January in terms of where were you sleeping on that specific night. But the information can be collected over the course of a week after that. So like for DSS offices, a lot of times they will, as their clients come in or as they're communicating with their caseloads and talking to their clients, they will ask over the course of the next week, hey, where were you sleeping? If they thought there was a reason that client may have been homeless or unsheltered or in another situation.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Because homeless shelters are not present in every community, so when someone shows up, or they ask like which county do they yield from, so that way we know that one in count may be with Madison. You know, that we may have 3 homeless, but they show up at the shelter, they're still homeless, that's important. But in that count, just knowing where they originate can help us determine our overall.
Yeah, in general, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think with homeless, with the shelter in Culpeper, and I'm not talking about the warming shelter, but the 15 bed shelter was operated by Culpeper Housing and Shelter Services. They do enter anybody that's in their shelter goes into what's called the homeless management information system. And so that information is collected in terms of where did they get somewhere else. It's not a requirement, they collect that data. I will say that the warming shelter in Culpeper this year did make a significant effort of trying to collect that of, okay, did you come from, which county did you come from? They broke it down by, and I think, I want to say this was last meeting where I had some of that information shared or had some of that information available to it. I just don't have a committee memory, but they will say this number came from the planning district and break it down by county. This number came from outside the planning district. And I think because that's something we hear a lot is, the shelter's here, but people are coming from outside the region or the county or whatever. And that, that is the case in certain circumstances. But
Well, I think it's fair, and because I remember when there was talks about who was going to run the warming shelter, for example, and all right, well, every board gets their funding request every year, so knowing who's using it, they may not be using something in your county because you don't have available, but if those citizens are using another locality's facilities, it'd be good to know that, if they're making a funding request.
yeah, and I think I do think they collected that this year, so I hope that if they're making a funding request directly to you next year, that they would
Thank you.
Surely.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I could ask a question. Patrick, okay, there you are. Back to the bar graph on the men versus women data, real quick. Has it a little more 60? There we go.
Yep.
Has it always been that trend so that percentage of women that are homeless is so much higher than the men?
I don't want to say it's always been that broad of a disparity, but I think in general, what we've seen is you have families typically, if you only have a one person or one parent household, it's typically a mother with children, and so that, and especially in transitional housing, that would be the case where we'd expect to see that. It's not 100%. But yes, I would say I feel comfortable saying that women have always been a higher percentage than men. That also includes, children too. It's about depending on the family, whether it's boys or girls that we're going back.
And it's typically due to the fact that it's a single parent situation and employment opportunities are limited, et cetera, like that. That's kind of the biggest
Yeah, I think
determiner of women.
Yeah, I think in terms of why the number of women is higher is because it's again with shelter and transitional housing especially, you're more likely to see a single parent household with kids with a mother as the head of household. Now, if we're talking about unsheltered individuals, I think we probably see a reverse of that, where you've got a higher number of unsheltered single men as compared to single women. Not that there are not single women that are unsheltered in the region, but the number would be higher on that case.
Okay, Patrick, I think if you look at the next page, there's a graph that at least shows the trend for 3 years.
For 3 years. Thanks, Ross. So that kind of shows you. So it was higher this year than core in terms of men, but it's always been a higher share of women's. You see that, Mr. Lee, right there? That
Yes, sir.
Pages down, it shows broken down by kids,
Yeah.
women, and where they actually slap.
You know what, Mr. Heidel, you can So again, I'm happy to provide more information, but I wanted to make sure that you all knew it was in there, and that if there are conversations happening at your locality, specifically around homelessness or around housing vulnerable households that are not necessarily haven't become homeless yet, please reach out to us. I mean, we don't will 100% raise my hand and say we don't have the answers and we don't have the solution for you, but we want to be part of that conversation as part of our role as the lead agency.
Patrick, I noticed that it says 37% have either mental, developmental, medical, or physical disability. Do we break that down at all? Do we understand, I guess that would include addictions, right? Is that be considered either a disability? And wondering what percentage of these folks have a medical condition because they are homeless, or they are homeless because they have a condition?
To the first question, and again, all of those are self, it's not necessarily you've got to show us your doctor's note that says this is the case. But to the first question, I think there probably is additional detail that we can get into, and I'll take that back to our staff to see if we can dig in a bit more. The second one, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think, you have some people, especially with a mental or physical disability, that may, for whatever reason, end up not being able to stay in their home. I think one thing we've certainly seen is, and tied to that, especially for people that are on Social Security or on disability, with rents rising, across the region, I think that is one where we can see a pretty consistent pattern of either my landlord has decided to sell, and so my unit is no longer available, or my landlord has raised the rent to a point where I can't afford it on disability plus whatever other income I have coming in. There's no way getting around the second part of your question of somebody that becomes homeless is subject to a much harsher condition and likely, picks up additional, I would say disabilities, but just as a hard time medically. And so I think there's a lot of both.
Thank you.
Yeah, I include that in there. There's really the only main thing I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of was the fact that the location for the pacemaking collaborative event on the 15th is Old Trade rather than Old House. So.
Moving into old business, and I know this isn't on it, but is there any update on your office space?
Sure, yeah, happy to kind of include that here. I do want to thank Mr. Broadus and Mr. Hively. They both walked through the other building in our office park maybe a month and a half ago, in between the last meeting and this one. Did have, based on their thoughts and in terms of what might be appropriate, did have some additional conversations with the building owner, who I think feels that may be able to get more than we were comfortable saying. Here's an initial, informal offer. So we're still looking. I think that has, in my mind, has given me greater thought to, okay, let's look internally to our own building and see what might be possible. And I think that's still something that will come out during the course of this fiscal year. So. So no major changes, but it was instructive for me to walk through that space with both of them who know a lot more about it than I do.
He's very proud of his building.
And as you said, it's a very nice, building and would be a great turnkey for a medical provider if anybody's knows one that's looking for space in Culpeper, so.
All right. Regional broadband project status. I think we're still only about the two of us that are affected, two jurisdictions, but
We had our
anything
first
happening?
customer,
Oh,
the
good.
first customer went live yesterday.
Woo-hoo. Well, you're almost caught up with us.
They put the banner mission accomplished.
All done. Right?
I think we're about 10 ahead of you.
Okay.
Alright.
Gotta take it slow.
Yeah, I have noticed the slowdown recently, permit hold, the permits and bond capacity and. But that's very short lived because it's very nice outside. Have you seen similar? Or?
We have seen similar, yeah. That's because of the VDOT piece, yeah.
They went from having 12, 13, 14 crews running to 3 or 4 crews running.
I've been in communication with our residency folks trying to
Us too.
do what we can.
Yeah.
And it's only gonna get worse, because of fees, all the money that
Oh,
the state's giving.
Yeah.
So VDOT is overwhelmed with permits right now, and the power companies also both of it.
And I think there's a general disconnect is where we're being told that, VDOT sees the permit as cradle to grave from the moments that permitting starts to put conduit in the ground, and it only ends after fiber is pulled and terminated and done. Whereas the ISP might have a large lag between conduit done in a certain area, in a 2-mile permit area, and when that fiber is ready to pull through a full section. But then they end up with a bunch of permits tied up. And I know they're trying to work with Richmond to straighten that out and maybe find a better way to build a blanket permit to pull fiber later.
And they've got to close them out too, because that's what got us in trouble. The bonds was overextended
Yes.
because we had all these open permits.
Yes.
The work was done 2 years ago, and we didn't close the bonds out. So if they don't close the permits out, then that bond is over exceeded and we're not issuing another permit. They don't tell you that to 2 months into it. You told us that we were closing them out.
That was some of our problems previous to that. They had to close some of the bonds out in like Rockingham for us to get more. So yeah.
They still have bonds open in cold.
Right. Yeah.
So Madison has I feel terrible when throw stuff out. Looking at the email from Gale and Firefly, we have 2,450 active connections. They feel like they're 98%. We had 2 batty rounds, so 22 and 24. Batty 22 is about complete. And then Batty 2024 will be finished at the end of the year. We're trying to get the chairman's connection at his home. I don't know why that hasn't occurred. But
Everybody's got it around me but me.
But one of the subjects I know roundtable will probably talk about at the end of the meeting is they're going to have to speed up in all counties because Verizon's trying to take your baseline away. So, but that's why we're at 70-some% versus I think where you go at 30 or 40%.
Firefly is going overhead and had a good relationship with CBC and RAC, whereas All Points is not able to have good relationships with many people.
Just one thing, Orange is our fiber link, obviously working with County Culpeper, and that's going well. We are adding a link, what we're calling a TV option, so it's not just broadband internet, but we were able to go out and as opposed to having your fiber and then you have to sign up for YouTube TV or some other TV mechanism, we're going to add that as an option on our service, which we have a lot of existing customers who have asked about it, but we also have a lot of customers, potential customers, who said, I do it, but I've got Comcast and I get internet and cable and cable TV. It'd be nice to have it in one package. So we think we're going to have some uptick in subscribers as a result of offering that. That'll be later this fall. We put out the packages. We're getting some information. We've sent out to all of our FiberLink customers this scenario where you could pick your level of TV instead of a lot of elderly folks say, I want one bill. You know, I'm used to one bill from Comcast. I don't want to pay FiberLink and then pay YouTube TV, and you know, everybody has their own thing, so we thought, well, we'll add it and maybe this will help us out. So we're getting a fair amount of interest on it.
Janelle, one thing I have noticed in Rappahannock, I've had people say the deal's too good, so I threw it away. They just didn't believe it. So it's been so long since they really heard about All Points and fiber coming to their home. Because now there's no setup fee, where there used to be, and, coming all the way down some of our driveways is pretty long, so they're thinking it's not the real deal. So we're trying to figure out a way to advertise together, county and All Points, to make sure people understand this is the real offer.
We had similar, because people were paying 300 plus for Comcast and they're like, what? With
Yeah.
FiberLink, it's 79, you know, at a very high speed, or with the TV, it'll add another, it'll be half. You get half. And that's for a lot of folks, that's a big deal,
Yeah.
cutting your 300 bill in half.
So good, they don't believe it.
They don't.
You mentioned that Verizon is losing all the copper, the traditional phone lines. Is Verizon by chance going to be removing any of their lines or infrastructure that's visible with the removal of this?
I don't know the answer to that.
I was gonna say, you all went down.
They're gonna use that to overlay fiber onto their lines there. So they've already started doing that, like down 15. They're overlaying.
Put them on poles?
fiber onto the poles that are already there. So they're not taking that copper away. Now, the underground stuff will be there forever. It's not about tearing out. But most of it, they're just overlashing fiber into it, so they don't have to put up new plant, a new strand.
We're thinking it's probably a good time to talk to Verizon if anybody wants to discuss the letter that's going out to Verizon customers.
And they're doing this all over. It's just not in Virginia. I mean, Brightspeed's already done it in Charlottesville. California's they're doing it everywhere. It's just copper lines are too expensive to maintain it. So it's like, we don't have as many customers we used to have before. Doesn't help my grandmother, but it's part of progress.
Yeah, the timing is problematic. Yeah, and I appreciate everybody's response to my email. I didn't know I was gonna gather so much big input on that, so thank you. That I had a conversation with our IT director about us losing a couple of actual town, copper lines that we have in place for connectivity to some infrastructure and then back up to some of our police department. So at least we got something out of it, so I appreciate the quick response on that.
And I expect we'll be submitting comments to the FCC and the board will consider that next week. And I don't know how successful we're gonna be. We're a tiny spot in the 4-state region for this application.
So, okay, when is the public comment period? Did they say when it was
It
gonna?
doesn't say, but I think normally from other applications is 5 to 10 days after it's docketed. So it was just docketed yesterday.
All right,
Would start.
and then it's
15
only gonna
days.
last 15 days. All right,
And is it in writing or?
Yeah, they have an online system that they encourage people to use. I think they have a way to allow people to send paper mail, but I would expect that will get buried somewhere.
Is there a cutoff? Have you given us a cutoff date, or they have to wait for the hearing?
October 23rd is what they've said in their notice to customers.
Okay.
But they've also said in their application and after the fact, their representatives to us that we're not going to cut it off for anybody who doesn't have an alternative.
yeah, they're trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
it really speaks out of both sides in the application. But there's no explanation of what an alternative is or isn't, how you account for that, and that's part of what we'll mention.
Alternative.
We'll include that in our letter that, maybe that's fine. Many of our citizens can do without your copper landlines and have already moved away. But others have no alternative, and if that's your position, great, make a list.
My concern is they're not well organized. I have a couple buildings I own. One building, I got notice from them that they want to come in and switch out. And so I called the property manager and said, where do we have Verizon in that building? She says, we don't. But they think they do, but they don't. But in another building, we didn't get the letter. And in fact, the copper lines are what we use for our fire you know.
Yeah, alarm lines are a big user. of this.
Yeah.
If you have those, there are options for cell if you have cell.
Our fire marshal for a while would not allow cell, and I don't know if they've changed that, but they would not allow cell or TCP/IP as an alternative. It had to be on POTS lines. So I'm hoping to modernize. Thank you.
We're violating two of our buildings then.
Mhm.
Don't send the phone that way. Yeah. It's reliability. It's either a bad splice or a rainstorm and
All right.
your facilities people don't need to keep generating overtime for faulty lines, so.
That's the problem. Even if you only have 20 customers in Rappahannock County, to get something repaired takes, I don't know. Takes forever.
If you try to go through the Verizon online system to get a ticket, it's almost impossible. Totally impossible if you happen to live where there's no other phone service. So we end up having to advocate few humans with Verizon and Brightspeed we can reach out to and then usually get things resolved pretty quickly.
Right.
Getting to that point is hard.
I would encourage, I shared with the group, so I know we have another Judson, we have a Judd Buchanan. Okay. On the board of supervisors. But Matthew Ogburn, who thanks the Chris, because I couldn't get through, even though Verizon has a building in our county, had to go to congressional level to get his number, but he's great. He's responsive. I know he works for the company that's doing this, but he was willing to, I mean, we were on the phone until like 7 o'clock. He was at work, I was at work. Why not make it a date? But he's willing to take whatever questions. He did indicate, I don't know if you want to call it a memo or some other information that'll be released. It's just working through their legal team. I said, hey, it'd been nice to have that from the front. But you know, use him as a resource. That's his job. He's a director of state and local government affairs. So very helpful.
All right. We've got an update on the regional water supply plan. Michelle.
Yep. So DEQ has had another grant round, and we have applied for the full amount, and we're waiting to hear back on it. But it is roughly $40,000, and the scope of that is essentially largely to hire a consultant to assist with the technical aspects of the water supply planning process, especially particularly the analysis portion of it, and assisting with the technical aspects of plan writing. But so the bulk of that funding, $27,000, would go towards the consultant, with the remainder going to the regional commission staff for that. So we'll be doing additional data collection, revising our timeline, writing up some more public outreach documents, fact sheets for the public, and that sort of thing with this grant. So stay tuned.
I think the other thing from our perspective that's challenging right now with DEQ, the way they've chosen to run this out, the additional 30,000 per year was included in the both years the biennial budget that was just passed 2 months ago. But the way DEQ manages this is they're continuing to do it individual grant year by year, and so this, like, we're in a period. The last one ended in April or May, I guess. We could spend up until this one. They don't expect us to receive, like, to be able to start billing time to it until October.
Yes.
And it needs to be done by April. And so we end up with these periods in between where, for the way the commission staff is, if we don't have something to bill to, like if we don't have that money to bill to, yeah, we're doing the work of doing the application, but if we don't really have a way to recoup those dollars in between those. So that's something we're trying to get DEQ to understand and say, write this with maybe July 1 to June 30 date. If you want to report before that, that's absolutely fine. We can absolutely do that, but it really hinders us in terms of doing something continuing. The other piece with the consultant, getting consultant costs back to do technical assistance, that'll give us a better sense of how much are we actually going to need to support not just our staff time, but the work of doing this plan before the 2029 deadline. Again, for conversations with you all at the local level of how do we, how will we eventually break this down in terms of, local contributions if your boards and councils are willing to contribute, or if we figure some other method out. Or if we use that as going back to the General Assembly and saying, 30,000 per year is just not going to cut it. It was in my director's report, but it was with Chair Donahue and several others of you at the Vaco County Officials Summit a couple weeks ago, and that was something, I think it was the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee where a member stood up and said, 30,000 per year is, I mean, he said his PDC, I think it's Roanoke Valley was where he was from, but he said, we're looking at, at least 100,000 and consulting costs in addition to our staff costs, so 30,000 a year to probably cover this. So I think that's sort of our thought process, is to help us get to a number that we can then circulate amongst you all, as well as the General Assembly, as well as other funders, to fund that mandate that, has partial funding right now. But again, the bigger problem is the fact that this continues to be sort of piecemeal and 6 months at a time, with 6 months off. It's just not sustainable in terms of getting a good product at the end.
I have a question. I believe the new water supply plans allow for, maybe the wrong term, but interjurisdictional working together, that water supply plan. I thought Orange County was maybe working with a different community outside of PD9. Is that still part of our plan if there's other counties?
So the regional planning unit is coincident with our 5 counties, and Orange County had looked at it, I think, looking at making a request to go elsewhere. There's nothing that precludes.
We didn't do it though.
Right,
Okay.
so the 5 counties are still the same, and the 8 towns too, are all part of the Northern Piedmont 1 regional planning unit. Nothing precludes any county from looking at, talking with their neighbors that aren't in that regional planning unit. And I would say the one thing that, and Michelle, tell me if I'm wrong here, but we do have to come up with, what are your alternatives for addressing the demand that comes out of this? And some of that can be.
Yes, the idea is not that you're only seeking water within your planning unit or putting it out. Just it's not a boundary that you're operating within. There is an expectation that there would be some level of collaboration with those adjacent to you. But
So in the case of, just related to your point, in the case of Orange County, if there's a reservoir in a county to the south that potentially could be a source, or if there's something to the east, or for any of our counties, if there's a source that is outside those 5 counties, that's something we could identify as part of the plan, saying this would be an alternative that could be or would be pursued.
Okay. I was thinking on the whole global level, whether there's other, counties, long-term planning, not just being able to visibility and being aware of that, because there may be other counties that would consider that in the future. Thank you.
We have a
What does that mean for for town like Warrenton that has surface water, resources and everything, and then if we, counties around us can suddenly start buying that as a.
No, I don't think it's
that's
into
fine.
it's really just saying as a region,
Yeah.
here's the demand that we've identified and what are the ways of doing that. Historically, Fauquier County, Town of Warrenton, Remington, the Plains did an individual water supply plan. The state came back 3 years ago and said, we don't want 90 plans to review, we'd rather have 25. And so they said, here's this new region that you need to develop this plan at. But I think in this case, it's not so much about, saying we're gonna come take from, it's more, here's the need, here's our sources, here's how we plan to address it in terms of potential.
But as we focus on need, we can focus on need within the town, from the town resources, and have the expectation it's not gonna be, farmed out to other.
Yeah, it's not gonna, there's not gonna be a mandate that says the town has to do this now because they've got a surplus of water.
no, I mean that it's not don't conflate plan with permit. I mean, so this is not going to hinge on a permit. They're not forcing anyone to get water from somebody else. This is more of your just planning document. So whatever deals you worked out with other counties is a separate thing, but you would talk about it in this, but it's not precluding you from working with other counties, but it's not forcing you to work with other counties per se. What comes out eventually, once the state looks at all of this and decides, this is an issue, that's to be seen, but.
Yeah, and I think early in the process, we kind of fall in 2 watersheds, the York and the Rappahannock. And so we're just kind of looking at that going, where is water? What are, is it useful to have a conversation with a different neighboring county that's not in our planning district? I think that was just in the early stages when we all sort of didn't know who was on first and what was going on, and will we have some opportunity to have connections or collaboration with other counties? Maybe the solution that that we ultimately come up with, maybe we can help someone else as well. You know, maybe they have a neighboring counties looking at our planning district, and we just, to me, it seems to me, we want to have an open mind with those kinds of things. We're in a pretty tough place because we have one source. Except Town of Orange has a backup, but much of the county is the bulk of RSA, for example, which is we share. You know, most of the 81% of the customers are in Eastern Orange, and the Rapidan River is our only source. And when it goes down, that's a bad day for about 15,000 people. And so that's what we're sort of looking at on the ground, but then we have to go, all right, let's pull up and look across with our neighbors and our, you know, partners in the process. And the supply planning is supposed to be 40, 50 years out. And then you have to go, all right, what are you going to do to address that plan, the supply? And then that may, I think, result in some other things.
Yes, I mean, all the data that we're collecting in the spreadsheets workbook, this Excel workbook that DEQ has given us to fill out is county by county. But then we'll combine all of the information to try to come up with solutions at the regional level for challenges we see after the analysis. But then the state will then look at it eventually to look at it at the 10,000 foot level, and they'll also most likely be looking at it by watershed, because like the River Basin Commission, the Rappahannock River Basin Commission that many of you sit on talks about this. There's a lot of push to look at it at the watershed level as well, because obviously that's a concern. Water doesn't stop at anybody's boundary. So yes.
And that was really our dynamic was we're sort of not quite cut in half, but almost, where part of our water goes to York and part goes to Rappahannock. And we're just like, what does that mean for us? And I think once we saw the process unfold, we're like, okay, don't need to, you know, put the 10-alarm fire on, so to speak. And let's go through the process, see where it ends up, especially when you're collecting the data early on.
Right.
You sort of don't know what you don't know. And that's across the board for all of us.
And this is gonna end up with a October 2029 deadline. Right?
Correct.
We've got some time to figure it out.
We have some time. Yeah, I mean, I think the well data is really going to be the most difficult piece of all of this, because that really comes down to we don't know what we don't know, and getting information from the health department tends to be like pulling teeth and see.
Sources from USGS as well for some of that.
I haven't been, no, it's mainly DEQ has provided data, and BDH is the other source of the data, and whatever the local governments have, that hasn't been applied at this point. But yes, I'm waiting to hear what the consultant has to say, really honest, not hydrologist, so yes.
Thank you. 2027 regional legislative program.
Yeah, just again, and I feel like this has become a never put on the agenda, but regional assembly runs until the end of June. That forces our hand a little bit, but as both Eldon James and Laura Bateman have said, and as many of you have heard from other sources too, trying to have a legislative platform, you know, earlier rather than later is sort of as a direction. I think we're still on track for October, which I think is probably about as late as we want to push it. But you know, there's a couple of things that have come up, and you know, the memo that I included with the packet, you know, I identified a few of those, but I don't presume that these are the only changes or the only new things that should be included. My recommendations, just from various meetings I've been at and talking with several of you, are outlined there. I think strengthening the language on local control, and specifically if there are alternative or preferred approaches to some of the mandated requirements on any particular topic will be important. And again, I'm not saying here's exactly how we phrase that, but I think that's something to consider if you're having local discussions. I know Madison has a meeting tomorrow, and Bob here in just a couple of weeks too, with their General Assembly members. And so I think that's important. My thought on the regional platform is, as those local discussions, you know, evolve, that's where we're going to pull some of the language from too, rather than push it out to you all. I think we can be somewhat reactive to your needs and as you're identifying those things as well. Impact fees are listed. I know that Madison County last year made that push. I think it seems like there was at least some general interest. I think there's some guardrails probably that you all want to have a discussion, but they're not referenced at all in last year's platform. So I think adding some reference to however strong that might be would be something that would need to be added between now and October. The general government, so this is on page 3 of the platform attachment. Recommendation of just strengthening and adding language, and this is on the state supported position. So the issue of the budget getting passed on June 28th or 29th or whatever it was, and having raises added in at various times for state supported, whether it's law enforcement, teachers, wherever else. So just I don't know that there's so much of a legislative fix for that, other than trying to communicate the impact that has on you all, because that sums up for just about all of you at various times. And then as we talked a little bit about earlier, and it didn't have an in-depth discussion, but energy supply and demand, the section from last year's platform, as it says here, largely focuses on data centers and local control and electrical rate structures, because I think that was what we were thinking about or hearing more about at this time last year. It seems like the idea of a comprehensive energy analysis or improvement of communication between utilities and local governments on the front end are things that have come up, and certainly at the June meeting and your all's discussion. The stated preference in the resolution that was passed for an on-site, not necessarily mandating on-site generation options, but having that option as part of the discussion. And then the idea of, again, following the existing rights of way for infrastructure upgrades and expansion. I just think, again, with energy and all that entails, continuing to be an evolving process, I think there just needs to be some more eyes on that specific section. Obviously, it will be included, I think, but we'll be very clear about if there is consensus around the particular items that gets into the platform again in the next month or two. And again, as I always say, I'm open because I know there's stuff that I'm not hearing that you all are dealing with that may benefit from being in here as well. And what I would do certainly after this meeting, I'll meet with Eldon and county administrator, town managers will be part of that conversation. But any of you that want to bring additional items, just to make sure that there is going to be a deadline for getting stuff in here so that it's useful going into next year's session.
You want to bring up the ag?
Absolutely.
Please do.
With that, we've in discussions with VACO and I think the agricultural committee, I'm sure it's called, asked them to bring some attention to the AG opinion from a few years ago that basically says that short-term rentals on agricultural properties is by right if people are there to enjoy the farm. So it pretty much makes any kind of overnight stay on an ag property by right. We don't like that. I think that's motels on a farm, probably not a good idea. So I would like us to have something like that in our package. We intend to discuss it with Dudley Weber, and we hope that TACO will raise the status of that if they're changed. It'll have to be legislated out of existence.
Basically, tightening up the definition of agritourism.
Yeah.
We got that on our agenda for tomorrow.
Good.
As well.
A few years ago, there was an amendment that was proper to add weddings as agritourism, and it failed, which I guess kind of must not be part of agritourism as a wedding. But
right.
And maybe if somebody tried to put an amendment on the floor to add short-term rentals as part of agritourism, and it failed, it would kind of further carve out the edges of what this thing is, or explicitly carve it out. It would be nice.
John.
I have one, and I apologize when I take I sat in the general government steering committee at last week's meeting, or whenever we saw each other.
Yep.
Collective bargaining, we all know is going to come back and it's in here. The gentleman from Fairfax, I forget his name, Eric Dow was there too from Urbana. And I think their consensus, and I'm in agreement with, I hate to wave the white flag on this, but should we we obviously want to take the position of leave us alone. I mean, I know it's prevalent in some areas, but don't mandate it in full. But if there is a fallback position, a lot of us, I'm assuming, do pay and classification studies every, 4 or 5 years, or, whenever there's economic downturn or markets that require it. Maybe a fallback position is, instead of mandating that, just localities, often or due to economic circumstances, perform a pay and classification study. That way it's leaving it at the local level. We're always checking each other's salaries for a position. I don't like the full mandate that they're trying to push, but it's going to come back again. And she may not be there at this time.
I think there's a state code that requires us to do that.
There's certain size, correct.
That we may have not followed for a long time.
Yeah, I've heard that, that on collective bargaining. The other I've heard is if you don't force it to a state level decision, and you leave any decisions at a local level, you can collectively bargain, but it doesn't, it sort of does allow for the ability to strike, and it doesn't allow for the ability to them to hold you hostage to get a pay increase, but you can still talk about working conditions and some of those things. So there's sort of I call it collective bargaining light, and so it's not forced into arbitration by some panel that doesn't have anything to do with Orange or Madison or any other county. And I had a particular experience early in my career with it at a state level. Worked very well. You just sit across the table, but we weren't forced to negotiate pay that someone else decided. And sometimes when you do your study, you want to make some changes anyway. And so you could sort of turn that into a win-win when you're sitting across the table from in a bargaining type scenario. So I don't know where that'll go, but I've heard that option out there as well. I think it's worked in other places. It's when you get into someone else deciding what you're going to pay.
Yeah, my main concern is, I'm sure all of us fight shortages of public safety positions, and they talk. And, that whole name, image, likeness, or free agency, I just don't want that to occur where it's not CBA light and it gets into these, unrealistic salaries that it's going to break the bank for all of us.
Can I just mention one other thing? Sorry. I just took over as chair of the VACO Transportation Steering Committee, and three issues that are out there. The VACO broadly is going to be part of their legislative program, and the first is funding for VDOT. Like, it's time for VDOT, to quit the austerity program that is put on our roads, and we don't get the attention we need. So there's some desire to do some things in that regard, talk to the appropriators and both House and Senate. So I think that's very positive. I think you're going to see some language in the fall conference that'll boost that to a higher priority. That's one. Number two are e-bikes. So there's a department of, so e-bikes, you think, oh, that's no big deal in some of the rural counties. No, it's in the populated areas. It's a really bad scenario right now. So Department of Motor Vehicles has a working group, VACO's on it. I expect we're going to see some legislation on that. There's just this mix of who's wearing helmets, what's the class, what's the bike, what isn't the bike, what are all these things, are mopeds included, all this stuff. So that's another item that's out there. And the third one, and again, you wouldn't necessarily think that this might be something that might hit us as a region, but I think it will. And I actually have some ideas around this, autonomous vehicles. So think not a Tesla or something. I'm talking about fully autonomous, nobody driving the vehicle, Waymo. So what you've heard is Waymo. And I think what they're looking to do is put some legislation potentially in place. Now, it tends to be probably Northern Virginia may get a lot of this attention. I think we might have an opportunity, especially where we have a need to to have transportation for seniors who can't drive to go somewhere, to hop in an autonomous vehicle and go to the doctor and come back, and that could happen in a rural setting where we can't get to them. You know, we don't have drivers, we don't have the ability to get to them, and I'm like, I would raise my hand to have a test program in Orange County for that. Broadly, we have some areas where we have densely populated senior folks, my district in particular, in Lake of the Woods, about 60% or over 65. We have a low link, which is a village that transports, and we have volunteer drivers. But just that's going to come out, the autonomous vehicles. It'll probably be centered around urban areas, but I just wanted to put that on. The urban area is creeping out to all of us in different ways. And I just wanted to put that particular item on the table. So those are 3 items that are kind of getting some attention.
They're coming.
What's that?
They were in Bryce's office a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Talking to them.
Yeah, they're coming. So I think e-bikes, that, and then the funding are 3 pretty big issues that I hope we can do something as a VACO, and then maybe even at the regional level if it's appropriate.
Thank you. Did Fauquier have the meeting with representatives? You guys, you do an annual.
We have put it off the next 3 weeks from now, something like that.
No, it's next Thursday.
Oh, it's next week. And 2 weeks ago. At least I got it right. We haven't had it yet.
And I was just wondering, would it make sense to invite our representatives to the dinner?
Yeah, and normally we do,
You do?
but I think
Okay.
honestly, I would say for any of you that have those direct relationships, it will mean more. An invite from you would mean more than me reaching out, so.
And Laura's coming to our meeting more, so I'm hoping she takes notes, but we'll compare after the meeting.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Janelle, you said the next Thursday or?
Oh, it's the 10th, you're right. I'm trying to rush.
He's still not late.
He's not late.
It's like Price is Right, as long as I'm not over.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving into new business. As you recall, the commission historically has authorized per capita dues rate and regional housing funding requests at its August meeting to enable staff to meet deadline for local government budget request. Patrick, would you review that?
I'm happy to. The recommendation this year, it's the 2nd year of a 2-year cycle. And so we had sort of followed Fauquier County's lead when they went to a 2-year budget cycle and just said, we'll just do every 2 years. And so this is the 2nd year. My instinct tells me that the county may have shifted away from that 2-year cycle, and so I'm sort of, as I was writing
It
this,
lasted
I'm
for
like,
about a year.
as I was writing this, I'm like, I think this is wrong, but we're in the 2nd year, and I probably promised them last year that we wouldn't do an increase. So the recommendation for staff is keeping our per capita rate at 83 cents as it has been for the last 11 years. And for the flat rate on the foothills housing network capacity request. It does say resolution. There's not a resolution. This is just one where we're asking for approval of those 2 recommendations. But I'm happy to answer questions for anybody, whether you're new or just don't remember how we got to those foods.
This is a great provision for Rappahannock County. Y'all grow, we stay the same, so we pay those. I move approval of the rates as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Right, Michelle, will you review the information for the Chesapeake Bay local implementation grant request? Local funding request.
Yes, as some of you may know, we have been doing stormwater best management practice assessments of municipal properties. Going county by county. Last year we did Orange County in town. This year we're doing Madison County in town. And as a result of that, the town of Orange, their top priority project is the Monte Vista Avenue parking lot, and they would like us to apply on their behalf for funding through DEQ that's available strictly for PDCs in the Bay watershed and watershed roundtables. So this project would involve permeable pavers and bioretention swale and bioretention facilities at that old public works parking lot site. And the project cost right now is estimated at $262,000 with a grant funding request of $173,000, which includes 10% admin fee for RRC staff to manage the grant. And essentially, Debbie is Sturm is working with the town's engineering consultant to update those financial numbers from there. The last time this parking lot project, they had a plan done by the engineering firm was 2 years ago. But essentially, these are pretty close to the numbers that we're figuring would come out. There's no matching funds required for this funding, and the remainder of the funds would come from a pledged match from funds of the Rappahannock National Fish and Wildlife Fund grant that they already have, and applying for VCAP cost share from the Stormwater Conservation District.
I will happily make that motion. I will add that I do have money budgeted if we could get them that much.
All right, we have a motion and a second, any discussion?
Just the permeable pavers, is that a pilot program that they're starting this to just see how this is doing for?
No, this project would be somewhat similar to the project we did through a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant a couple of years ago at the Carver Center in Culpeper County. So they also have a permeable paver parking lot area and bioretention. So you can go out there to see how it functions, and it's gone very well. So I mean, yes.
So that's an example we could point to as, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's also permeable pavement out of the Culpeper Airport. So there's several examples in the region already of it, but yes, the one at Carver Center is the closest to this particular implementation of it.
Jill, well, for the projects we discussed in Madison, I'm assuming that would come back like a similar grant venue for those opportunities, or I know we still have a little bit of work offline to do.
My understanding is that this money through DEQ comes from EPA.
Is it annual?
And it had been, but now the money is going away because it was IIJA money, Infrastructure Investment Job Act money that, was COVID era. So that's pretty much ending. And then also a NIFWIF grant that DEQ got. Next year, it definitely won't be available. They're going to be reapplying for another NIFWIF grant. So hopefully the following year they would get it. But there's other funding sources like the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund and some other things that we can go after. So while it may not be this exact pot of money, we would be able to help you get funding other ways.
The biggest thing I've learned was that if they do projects to maintain them, I did not know that one rain garden or storm retention below the library existed. I learned a lot.
So, I will say that we are holding a training session. It's Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professionals Cruise Training. So it's essentially for facilities staff, Parks and Rec, maintenance staff, those types of things where they can go to a day training and learn how to take care of these things. There's been examples we know within the region, I won't say who, but maintenance staff came through. It was a created wetland. And when we went out there with the grant funder to look at it, it was completely mowed down, all the bushes, everything was completely denuded. So, I mean, that's the reason why we want people to know how to maintain these things. So I encourage you to encourage your staff to attend this free training.
Not emailing that.
I will. Once we have a link, it's brand new. Yeah, so it's put on by the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professionals, and they come and give the training. So yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We had a motion, a second. With no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Please. All right. Virginia Conservation? Okay. Staff were apprised of a change to the policy guidance for the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program and have prepared a letter outlining concerns with the change. This is you as well.
Yes. So we have been alerted to a change in the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or VCAP's cost share program manual, that sets a cap, a lifetime cap, not only for homeowners, but for local governments. So it definitely affects our area. Culpeper County has already met that lifetime cap. They've instituted, you can request a variance, but to us, it is still a barrier that you would have to then request a variance forever and ever. So we're basically requesting them to consider local government's needs and how this could be a deterrent throughout the watershed, throughout the state, and potentially instead looking at awarding, bonus points if you're a first time applicant. We find that to be reasonable. That's what other grant programs do. Sometimes it's, if you have won a grant within 5 years, that's reasonable. So I've talked to the person who's in charge of or who coordinates the Virginia Association of Soil and Water Conservation District Board that oversees all of this, and they recommended writing a letter to help them make our case. So I know Friends also turned in a letter because they help local governments get this funding as well. Yes, if you have any questions.
All right, we have a requested action to approve the executive director to submit letter outlining concerns with VCAP policy changes.
So moved.
Got a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion of second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Patrick, assuming that last vote was to authorize the requested action for the Chesapeake Bay, you can show me as an affirmative vote.
Want to say that again?
Stepped out of the room.
Yeah,
then.
we approved it.
Yeah, you can show me as voting for it.
Oh, I mean. Thank you.
All right. Will you review the item regarding commission procurement policies and procedures?
Well, super dry here, but the gist of this is that as we have multiple times during most years, we just had a compliance review with one of our state funding agencies, and a recommendation came out of that to review and update our procurement policies, because what we have typically provided is a resolution that is decades old, saying we'll basically follow the Virginia Public Procurement Act provisions, and references $10,000 as the limit for, following all those, anything below that, we've got a little more flexibility. So as part of that recommendation, what we said was we'll bring some draft provisions to the commission, and I'm not asking for adoption today, but would do so in October. Really what I want to make sure, and the document that's in front of you today is one that's been used by other PDCs with some selected provisions made on my own part. But mostly just want to make sure that the thresholds that are listed here are, these would range from that blanket 10,000 and below. We've got options 10,000 above. We really have to follow. This increases some of those to between up to 100,000 for certain things, goods and services would need to be, approved through this has listing of positions that don't exist for our organization, but executive director, deputy director, anything above that would go through. Doesn't take away that we would follow Virginia Public Procurement Act, but it does open up some of the flexibility in terms of, especially what we've seen, like in this compliance review for software purchases that exceed $10,000 for our transportation collaborative, software that manages all the ride requests and things like that. This would give us some flexibility there, that without having to go out every single year and try to rebid certain things like that. We don't do a lot of procurement, typically 1 to 2 a year. But this would give us, would allow us to meet our compliance review finding from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. But B, it would help, clarify for staff and also for the future use of the commission. So again, not asking for any approval today, but certainly as you read through that really 5 pages of information, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them in between or in October.
I would recommend that you reference in the purpose, the 2.24303G, which authorizes the small purchase procedure.
Right. Yeah, and I think, ultimately, again, we're trying to give ourselves flexibility without, taking it so far that there's not a report back to the state or certainly.
All right, lastly, there's information on the Rural Health Transformation Initiative, Central Commission involved.
And this is an item that is somewhat evolving. Even this morning was on a conference call with 10 or maybe a dozen other planning district commissions. Really two reasons that I wanted to include this on the agenda. Let me see if I can pull up. So a couple of reasons why I wanted to have this in front of you. One is just for information purposes. Rural Health Transformation is a program that is funded out of HB1 or HR1 at the federal level. In Virginia, the Department of Medical Assistance Services and a group that was put together under Governor Youngkin's administration applied for funds last year prior to him his term ending. They were awarded, and so now under Governor Spanberger, there is a Rural Health Transformation group that is overseeing the implementation of this. They received, and I think it's in the, make sure I don't get the number wrong here. The award for the first year was $189.5 million to the Rural Health Transformation Program in Virginia, and they've identified these 4 kind of interconnected initiatives, and those are outlined in the memo. But it's the innovative technology and data-driven solutions, which is what they call Care IQ, connected care closer to home, which is about flexible, sustainable care models directly in communities, homegrown health heroes, which is about workforce within healthcare, and then Live Well Together, which is promoting healthier communities through prevention, reducing risk factors, and increasing access to wellness. The sharing information with you all, because there's a lot of money out there that could potentially be available to your healthcare providers, whether it's a hospital or a free clinic or other partners in your communities that are providing these services. What's up on the screen right now, and I'll share this link afterwards, and I'm sure it was in the packet too, but they have divided these up into various funding programs. So you can see the 4 initiatives here on the left, and then there are about within each of them 3 to 4 sub-initiatives, which are where the funding goes. Right now, there's 5 of them that are open for funding, and some of them can be pretty specific in terms of who's eligible to apply. But I think for you all, as you're out in your communities and in your counties and towns, making sure that your partners working in healthcare are aware of these and are actually going after them, because there's a lot of opportunity there. Secondly, I know a couple of you, Madison County, Rappahannock, maybe others have talked about community paramedicine. So there is a specific community paramedicine sub-initiative, which is not yet open for applications, but I would encourage keeping an eye on that, because I do think it would be something that would, help you all in your efforts on that. And certainly our staff would be able to assist if that was something that would be of interest. The last piece, and so the reason from the commission perspective, from our staff's perspective, you can see what the Rural Health Transformation Program have identified what they call these key implementation partners, and you can see that spans Virginia Healthcare Foundation, Hospital and Healthcare Foundation, Foundation for Community College Education, Virginia Works or Virginia Career Works, Department of Education, all the way down. For this mobile and hybrid care sub-initiative, Heidi Hertz, who was a previous Assistant Secretary of Ag and Forestry, I think under Northam maybe, she's the head of this Rural Health Transformation Program. She approached the PDCs and said, we'd really like to work with you all directly on this mobile and hybrid care initiative, mostly as a means of having a closer tie to the local area. So if projects come up through either pre-clinics or hospitals or someone else, that it's not just going straight back to the state level. There is some level of coordination locally or regionally. So the request from staff today is to allow us to continue to pursue that. Right now, they've executed one agreement with Northern Shenandoah Valley Regional Commission. I think there's, like I said this morning, 10 to 12 other PDCs that are interested. And really what this would allow is it would almost, in my opinion, would sort of mimic the PDC housing development program that we just closed down, where we would put out a request for, you know, whether it's proposals or requests for projects, to interested, you know, providers or interested groups that would come back through us. And then in coordination with the state level would make those awards, and then would be that sort of in between, you know, putting the money out to those organizations, in the local communities. Feels like I was talking to the Vice Chair Broadus before the meeting. It feels like something that's sort of, you know, indirectly tied to some of the things we're doing, but not something that's in our wheelhouse. But from a project and program delivery standpoint, it does remind me very much of the work that we just completed on housing. So doesn't really give me too many concerns there. But so again, two things that were brought to you. One is just the information on this program, because there's a lot of money flowing out. But two is a potential specific role for the regional commission to serve, and that's what the resolution kind of outlines. The call I was on this morning, I think the other thing that was included with your packet here, the other item that I included was, and this is a very basic scope of work of what they're expecting, what Department of Medical Assistance Services, which is the state agency that we'd be contracting with, really kind of outlines what the types of eligible projects are, which are, you know, up to potentially telehealth kiosks, clinics in a box, telehealth, electronic consultations, rural healthcare hubs, and then really what we would be, you know, responding to, which is basically, you know, doing that reporting, not so much the reporting of the numbers, but reporting back on grant spending and things like that. I think as this document here, this kind of scope imagines it would be a direct contract with DMAS and the regional commission. The other option that potentially could be out there would be a broader, either potentially in a subcontract role to another PDC that has a larger area or has more potential projects. So both are sort of out there, but I think in my mind, this one is the one that makes the most sense, given that there's likely to be interest from, again, free clinics and the two hospital organizations in the region. So again, I'm happy to answer questions. It is very much a process that is moving somewhat quickly and evolving, and may change. But yeah, I think this would give the permission to staff to continue to pursue it.
Well, question on some of the other categories that have not opened up yet. Is there timelines, or is it just awaiting?
Yeah. So the
yeah, that one.
Yeah, the breakdown is, yes, everything started, the first year kind of rolled out. They've got to have some of these, I think all of them have to be open by the end of October in terms of having that run. But these first ones, they didn't have any staff in place at the state level until April 10th of this year. So it's been a kind of move pretty quick, identify some of these partners. And that's why you see some of those that are doing multiple of these, because you've got to have, you know, groups around to it. But yes, you should expect to see these other ones rolled out in the next several months in terms of it. Right. There is if you're on this site, Rural Health Transformation, va.virginia.gov, there's a down at the bottom, if you sign up for these, you'll get all the emails that say, here's when this one opens. There's been, again, in the last 2 weeks, 2 or 3 that have come out now.
Do you have a sense of who would manage this? The regional commission did.
Staff-wise?
I know, if we
we
say
did.
yes.
Yeah, I think what would happen is you'd have, frankly, my colleague to the west, Northern Shenandoah, or potentially, because of the way, and let me see, hold on, I don't know if I've got the map here or not. They've identified it at the state level, they've identified sort of, here's our rural regions. And the definition of rural is one that's gone back and forth. A lot of times, certain counties in our region won't qualify as rural. In this case, all 5 do qualify to their definition, but they grouped us into a larger region with TJPDC, so Charlottesville, so sort of like the Virginia region. My guess is if we didn't, that one of them would be asked to, can you oversee any applications that come through this area?
Seems like it would be good for us to have greater control over what's happening in our area. If staff feels like you can handle it.
Yeah, again, I think so. I mean, I think, you know, again, we'll kind of see where it goes, but my feeling is we've definitely got some staff that can either step into this or could take on a larger role than what they're doing right now. Yes.
Madam Chair. Just so I can get my head around this, Patrick, like, so you say Fauquier would be rural, but that would include the town of Lawrence.
Yes.
So if the free clinic was looking for outside funding or something like that, we could direct them to this program, is that?
I mean, it's gonna be very specific in terms of like the uses. It wouldn't be something where if they need, for like general operating or something like that, but if they have a project that fit within, and that's why I sort of say encourage them to kind of go through this, because I would think Mr. Marino and others there could look at this and find out very quickly, yes, this makes sense for us. It could also be that they don't fit into that, they don't fit into the mobile and hybrid care that we potentially would manage, but they fit into one of these other, or they have a project that would fit into one of these other, categories or sub initiatives. So I think that's the piece too, because it's been so compressed in terms of timeline. I'm just not sure how many people know about, all the funding that's out there, or maybe they know about it, but just haven't had the time to dig into it. There was sort of about, I guess, last year, there was a request from DMAS for partners to submit, hey, just on the off chance that there might be funding available. From this region, the only one that went in that was solely in this region actually came from Madison Free Clinic, and I think it was tied to paramedicine maybe. But I don't think that is nobody else is interested. I just think it was, you're not guaranteeing me anything, so I'm just not going to take the time to submit. There were some larger things that came in from UVA Health and some of the other hospital providers that I think possibly would come back, or certainly would come back, but those would have a broader application rather than just the counties in our region that have served by those systems.
We're getting ready to roll out sometime soon. I hope the community paramedicine program. We met with folks from Madison. We also talked to Nelson County, who's already doing this. And just because I run with the rescue squad now, I really get a good feeling that this is going to help our community tremendously. The volunteers that go on calls for lift assists or just general, non-emergency, but the person needs help. I think this plan will allow us to get to them before they have to call 911, at least educate them on how you're less likely to fall and all that good stuff that they can do, because they'll have time to sit down with the individual instead of get in, fix the problem, leave. It's I'm really excited about the program. If you're not doing it, I would highly recommend starting looking into it. Great, so you need an adoption of the attached resolution authorizing participation in the Rural Health Transformation Program.
That would be great. So move.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right.
You said it pretty shortly.
I know. It's not very popular. All right, we don't have a closed session. We're going into the regional roundtable for the new folks. This is just your time to tell us what's going on in your communities and highlight anything in particular that you wish to do so. Would you like to start, Jane?
Whoa, no pressure. So Laura Loveday, I'm Special Projects and Grants Administrator. I've been with Culpeper County for 23 years. Live in Orange County, work in Culpeper County, have a kid in Rappahannock County schools. So I'm all over this region. Worked with Patrick for a couple of decades. I haven't figured out how to get something in Madison just yet. But in my previous work, I was a planner for Culpeper County. So happy to be here. I don't know for what length of time. While looking at Mr. Lee, well, we've got some.
As long as you'd like to.
Some new folks
to be.
To Culpeper, a new county administrator coming on board, and so I might be here for a long time or a good time. I'm not sure.
Right.
Okay, so we just passed an update to our comp plan regarding transmission lines and strengthened, that was last evening, strengthening our comp plan language with regard to how the SEC and or utilities who are looking at transmission lines will, this was important to get it in before the application is filed for Valley Link. We're still seeing a fair amount of misinformation between Valley Link, which does nothing for Orange County except a bunch of EMF. The only voltage we get is when you stand under it and get that voltage, but we get nothing from that line. But a lot of folks are saying, it's for data centers, and they're right. data centers in Northern Virginia. So that's a bit of an issue. This is just a word of caution to folks. We had an accident, a mistake in a FOIA that was not redacted appropriately, and confidential information was released that should not have been released. It was a staff mistake, and unfortunately, it took a set of economic development confidential bylaw information, and there was a link, and it took them directly to a Dropbox where all that information was. The problem is there were different things in there that were unrelated. One, we had an industrial park. We have an industrial park in the county. We have 2 lots left. So we're out of industrial park area. So we looked at some other potential areas for industrial park, and what people automatically assumed was that was going to be for data centers, which it wasn't at all. In fact, we have a separate ordinance that we enacted last December on technology district, which is for data centers in particular. And so that FOIA was pretty damaging because, just like if it were somebody asking something in on a personnel matter and you failed to redact something on that personnel matter, you never want to put an employee in a situation where you're providing confidential information. Same thing happened here, but we have transmission lines, we have data center. We don't have a data center in Orange County. We don't have an application. I suspect someday we'll get an application, who knows? And we have an industrial park that we were looking to do, and all of those have been turned into the boogeyman that is going to come out from under your bed and kill you. And maybe one of those individually could, but not all of them together. So that was unfortunate and very caused a lot of consternation with our citizens. So it's just a fact. It's out there. The other thing we did is continued on with our zoning work, in particular with our by right now in Orange County. We are the least restrictive of all of our neighbors in terms of by right divisions. So we currently have an unlimited. You have ag land, you can divide it into 2-acre lots, and that's it. There's no nothing. You can do it. There's no county involvement. And
if you have 100 acres, you could put 52 acres.
Well, you if you have 100 acres, technically you could put 50 lots, but you gotta have roads. And some you have to have roads, and so you might get 40 homes and 50 acres by right, and that's driving up our taxes because those houses require services, and it's a pretty big deal. So we're looking at both divisions. I know all of you have different versions. We've looked at all your stuff, and we just sent back to the planning commission. Look at our neighbors, and let's try to come in line with our neighbors. I think we're sort of in this, and we looked at sliding scale a little, and we looked at like a combination between divisions, and maybe it's like Louisa has 7 divisions total. We've talked about having 8, doing 4, and then 4 in a plan. And if you go ultimately to you want to do more, you have to do a rezoning from ag into something else. So this is in my mind almost one of the easiest kinds of things that we can do to come into line to manage our growth, because we have kind of unfettered growth and it's really hurting our tax base. An example, we have an existing by right for 106 lots. That means we're going to have 106 wells in this development, and no open space, no parks, no anything else. It's just 106 lots on ag land with wells and septic fields. And that to us is not a way to manage growth and have appropriate growth in targeted areas. So lots of debate around that. There's lots of ways to do it, but we know we're at the sort of it's the Wild West. You can kind of do whatever you want, and we need to kind of rein that in a little bit. There are a lot of different viewpoints on it, as you might imagine, and property rights and all these kinds of things that get brought up, and we have to manage that appropriately, and so we're trying to put some things in place there. So went back to planning commissioner, will come back to us here in a little bit. And so we can hopefully take some action and resolve that. We also have a rural residential that may come into play once we get the ag zoning taken care of in one way or another. And I'm kind of waiting because I happen to live in a planned development. So it is zone planned residential, and that's essentially my entire district. So these issues are broader across the rest of the remaining four districts, and we just have to be sensitive to these kinds of things that are going on. The other thing we are doing is we've got our volunteer fire companies and our career companies. We're going to have one chief. So we have out on the street one chief, and we've got a good partnership now working with all of our volunteers and our career. It's really been a journey for us to go on this path, and it's turned out to be pretty darn good. I know we've come to maybe some of you all and talked to you all about it. So thank you for all of the advice, counsel, and I think we've really come a long way in that effort as well. So that's about it for now.
Sounds like enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be watching to see what works.
Yeah.
Hopefully all of them. Rappahannock's going through comp plan review and update as well. Slow, gradual process. We'll probably end up where we started, guessing, for future land use visions. You followed our volunteer fire department legal fund that's traveled up to the Supreme Court, back down. We're going to have a trial in March on that. It was up to Supreme Court on a plea and bar that was that they deemed was improperly granted. So that's gone, and we're back in court. It's been going on for 3 years or something like that. A lot of fun stuff going on in our county all the time. Look at our calendars. I don't remember what's going on.
School's back,
Yes, yeah. Go fast to the school zone, please.
Raising
For transportation projects.
Yeah.
NTR, nothing to report.
Thanks, sir. Good to see you.
Go ahead, John. There you go.
Face of the Mountain coming up on September 5th. Thank you. We appreciate the town. We'll close it down for some good tourism. I understand Orange is having theirs the same weekend. Still working on our park project. Usual, kind of find funding for it, but we will be going out for a bid to see what the rest of it will cost. So hopefully we can fund it. I imagine many of you are looking into additional 1% local sales tax. So our board voted, it'll be on the referendum for the citizens to decide. Now we're just working on trying to get that information out in a neutral fashion, because state code says can't do it any other way. And then ADUs, we know what the state said, as far as buy right and residential, the planning commission, and ultimately it'll go to the board of supervisors to see if we want to go further than residential, allow ADUs in A1 and C1 zone, which is agricultural conservation. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Anything?
You all, other than, we had, Eric, we've got a pretty robust economic development committee going these days. So we had a town hall a couple weeks ago, which was well attended, as in 40 people or so were in there, which, when you don't offer pizza or threaten a noise ordinance, that's a pretty good showing. That's all you just mention those two, and you get a lot of people. And then tomorrow we have Senator Reeve, Delegate Hamilton, and Representative from Vinman's office coming for our legislative agenda to try to push through some stuff. One of the things the other thing that I didn't bring up, the paramedicine, we're trying to talked to him about getting some legislation for treatment in place, because right now we cannot bill for anything, you know, unless you cart them off to the hospital. So we should be able to bill for those sort of things. And I think we started our paramedicine program full blown. We've been doing a trial for the last 2 years. We funded it as of July 1st this year, and it is paying dividends already. It's obvious there. No units available that pops up on my phone has gone down, and I'm glad to see that. And that's because we're not going out just to get somebody off the floor necessarily. So yeah, we've got plenty of things going on. That's about it for Madison.
We won't lead though about the money part to bill it. We're going to say it keeps more units available.
Right.
Things like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Take the word transport out of the language.
So town of Madison is slow but steady, I guess, consistent. Snow removal, we are looking at, we got hit with a really big bill this past year for our snow removal. So we created a new scope of work for our keys to come in for this year, just to help us better plan the services. We do have the Tasting Mountains coming up September 5th as well, and we're thankful for the county's efforts with that. We are remodeling our DMV Select. We're getting bids right now to look at what we can do to increase and add an additional line to increase revenue and improve wait times. We've somewhere up here in Northern Virginia, we've got some of these small car dealerships coming down bringing batches, which is really just wonderful for us. And then no official understanding yet, but we do have, we just had a property in the town that was on auction, and we have an old abandoned grocery store that we've all been anticipating something, and those auctions, they're online bidding only. They end September 14th. So it's kind of an exciting time to see and find out what's going to come with this old property that we all in the community would just love to see something happen there that would benefit the community. So I'm in great support of hopefully a community-minded individual to see if we can't make some changes to the small town events.
For Capital Town, just on a fun note, we have probably the meeting next time we'll have some for get ready to have our October 10th. We'll have our fall festival, so that's coming up. Anybody wants to come by and down, you're certainly welcome. I do want to give a shout out to Patrick and Tara, of course. Patrick, support for our comp plan as well. We've been working on it now for a year. It's going real well. It's we're updating the comp plan from the last version 7, so it's been interesting. But it's going well, and again, the support is just, I can't say enough good things about it. So and then this month I noticed that we're waiting to hear back from the Army Corps of Engineers about our stormwater management study. So that's been going on for about 2 years, and this was the scheduled month to provide us with a report. So eagerly waiting for that. So yeah, that's about it.
Great. Judson?
Judd Rex, Town of Warrenton. Don't ask me any difficult questions. I'm still just a few weeks in here, but some of the big rocks that really are on my radar for the town. We have a very aggressive capital project slate, mostly focused on water and sewer infrastructure, pumping about $90 million into wastewater and water treatment upgrades, especially at the wastewater treatment plant. So our residents have been suffering through some rate increases to help fund that. I think we're through the hardest part of that, though. I mean, back into single-digit increases to fund that campaign. But that capital projects, heavy on the infrastructure side, but also, we're finishing a Main Street improvement project in conjunction with VDOT that will improve our sidewalks and paving and crosswalks and accessibility. That'll be finished before Fall Fest, which is the first Saturday in October 3rd. So It's fall, so lots of festivals going on, but we'll get to showcase our new Main Street then, and super excited about that. Other big rock is our zoning ordinance update. So we updated our comp plan a few years back, and this is really trying to implement that vision throughout the community. And so we have Clarion Associates, a consultant that's helping us work through that. And that's a pretty big project as well. Lots of other things I'm sure we could share. I don't know if you have any you want to add, Council.
Yeah, Larry Clough, Town of Warrenton. In addition to what Judd had already mentioned, we have rezoning coming up. The county has sold the Warren Green building, which was the old hotel in town. It's a great economic opportunity there. It was picked up by a gentleman who wants to bring a big hotel into the downtown area, so great economic development opportunities there. So we're going through a rezoning on that right now, which planning commission did recommend approval on. So things are looking good in that way. And as Judd mentioned, we got a lot of things, other things going on in the downtown area that's gonna hopefully spruce things up and get some vitality down there, and foot traffic, pedestrians, lawyers, visitors. But I think it's gonna be very well received. When I first met with Patrick, and new to this commission, my big thing is transportation. I happen to drive a lot of my day job, so I hundreds of miles on the road. And we have basically VDOT's going to come in and redo James Madison Highway, and you think it's going to be fairly easy process of throwing some roundabouts in where you now have traffic signals in there, but that, as anybody knows, it gets complicated because everyone's got a different opinion on what flows traffic the best. So we're going through a number of different discussions on that. We did some smart scale application for another intersection. This is really trying to manage, what's very important to me is trying to manage really what's our transportation corridors. I kind of look at it, the hub of the county. A lot of, 29th Road flows through 17, 15 to 11, everything kind of comes to a point in Warrenton. And interestingly enough, what happens to our west or what happens to our east really kind of impacts us. And we got to deal with it. And then we get citizen input from our community and citizen input from outside the community that's just transiting through. So we're trying to balance that all out. So it's bringing up a lot of different discussions, what's best to do. We over the past 2 years or so, we did the voluntary settlement agreement with the county to bring in the land behind what is the Home Depot, the Arrington property, and the 200 and some 40 acres or so of cred, or was given to us. So it's got commercial opportunity back there. If you're familiar, that's behind the Home Depot area. 25 acres commercial back there, another 270 homes. So, how that's going to impact the southeastern corner of the town now. So it's a lot of different moving parts into that. So we're kind of trying to keep an eye on that and make sure we're managing that and looking at it, from a holistic approach. And so that's one of my pet projects. So, and then in addition to what Judd had mentioned, Fall Festival, I'm looking forward to that, and reopen Main Street. And so that's about it.
Excellent.
Supervisor Broads, would you like to go?
No, you go. I've got a whole bunch, but
Okay.
whatever you don't do.
The good news is I think we're aiming to close on the Warren Green in October. So county administration will be moving to the 29 Ashley, which is the courthouse behind the Warren Green. Until we decide where we're going to end up at the end of the game, which, that's a long game. We've been participating in the SCC hearings for Morrisville to Wishing Star. The transmission lines, it has nothing to do yet with the substation, but Dominion Energy has come back to do pre-app on that substation. So that's going to be interesting to learn more about what their plans are. They had withdrawn it, I guess, at the beginning of this year, and now they brought it back. We are now at 200 career firefighter paramedics officially, with going to 42 hours middle of September. So this will help that the 4 areas of our county will have engines and ambulance responses. So hopefully that will be it for a little while, but probably not.
We look forward to hiring some of those folks to work part-time.
Yeah. I think that's all I have.
Go ahead. Town of Orange, we're getting ready to replace our sand filters in the water treatment plant. They're very old, probably 30 years old, so they definitely need to be replaced. Big cost of money there. Street Festival is September 5th, so we'll be competing with you all. One of the biggest things we have a major sewer line issue in the town farm. Anybody that says flushable wipes are flushable, that is a no. It took the employees 2 days to cut out a truckload of flushable wipes at a cost of $64,000 to replace the muffin muncher, or whatever you want to call it, separator. That did that. Also, we've got a big project that VDOT is paying for, Main Street and Madison Road. We're gonna replace the signal light there, so we're gonna have a lot of congestion going on in that area there. They're gonna drill huge holes and put new poles in, put new lights in there. So it'll be good for the town. Also, the town manager, he walks every morning with his dog, and he got tired of picking up trash. So he's hired a part-time employee now to go around and pick up all the trash, so he didn't have to do it in the morning time. So, but no, it really did. That part-time employee has made a big difference in the town area of Orange. And he was working this weekend, which was shocking to me. On a Sunday morning, he was out picking up trash before people went to church. So I was really shocked to see that. And that's all I got.
He's a full-time firefighter at one of our neighboring jurisdictions. So he said, can I work on my days off? And we were like, well, Sunday. But man, he was out there pulling weeds and cleaning up and he's started painting fire hydrants and just doing everything. It just turned him loose and he just goes after it. So some other things I wrote down, we're working on our comp plan revision also. Same thing with zoning ordinance. Orange lapsed with the Virginia Main Street program, and we have a board meeting today, so we're talking about restarting that. I don't know if anybody else got the email from Mountain Empire Community College about the grant for the internship program for wastewater operators. If you didn't, or maybe I should just send it to you, Patrick. You want to distribute, do support letters for that grant. We have Orange Street Festival the 5th, Orange Toberfest, September 26th. Delaware mentioned sound filters. Right on the back of that, we'll have liquid chemical feed building. Same construction company is about to give us a bid on that. And then we'll have our raw water intake screen will be replaced. We're in a study period for that. Signal replacement you talked about. And it's music in the park's supposed to be tomorrow night. I just texted the clerk, and so we have to push a week because of weather. And we've had developers from Florida, Ohio, Michigan in town looking at property.
Really? Yeah. How much town property is there undeveloped?
Well, some of it's raw land, some of it's existing commercial.
Yeah, so started construction on our wastewater reuse project that will provide the cooling water for the data center. It's a $30 million project. Going well. That project primary goal was to provide reuse water, but we did try to look at the scope when we were working through that project, that anything that it touched that was aging, we would do some renovation. So we're renovating pump station number 2 and replacing some aging generators, things like that with that project. So it's going well. They just asked us to expand the scope and do a preliminary engineering report to look at providing some of that reuse water to another data center site that's just north of our wastewater plant. So I'm hoping that preliminary engineering report requires us to upgrade pump station number 1 as part of that. So we're trying to leverage that work where we can. I might have said before, but it's the only project I've ever worked on that the bigger the cost goes up on the project, more money we make. So, 5%. Cost keeps going up. So that's going well. Every 2 years, we have a program where we it's an entrepreneurship training program, ends with a grant for whoever wins that. It's called Culpeper Competes. This is the year that'll be doing. We'll be doing that again. Starts September 9th. 10-week program, and at the end of that program, they'll compete and see who can get grants up to $30,000 for that.
This year, I believe we have 24 businesses competing and 30 people, so. I think this is the third or fourth time we've done that, and it seems to be going well. And the main goal is to try to get well-educated entrepreneurs that can land successful businesses in the town of Culpeper or wherever they decide to land. So they may land in your community as well. But we've had some success stories to date, so we're excited about that kicking off again. And that's probably got enough. Talk about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping Janelle would kick off more of these with that. Judd, welcome. We look forward to working with you in the town of Warrenton, and both of you, Larry, welcome to this. So Larry and I go way back, and we won't talk about some of that. At least I hope he won't talk about it. Our hospital that was nonprofit for a long time, and then got bought out for profit for a long time, just sold to a nonprofit. So Clark Hospital will be Bon Secours, part of their network. Very quickly, it's happening just like overnight, right? You know, the next.
I think they'll finish up contract November is like when it goes official, but
Which means we lose $800,000 in revenue, tax revenue. So great news. We had a super controversial application for a Gigaland, the biggest data center project proposed in a long time, that withdrew finally after they have pulled out. There are still 2 other applications in the pipeline, but I think smart money is on. There won't be any more data center approvals in thought. There haven't been any for 8 years, but it looks like it won't be any anytime soon. A handful of folks in this room had a Zoom meeting talking about a regional agricultural spot, a food hub, possibly abattoir, possibly a commercial kitchen, canning, cold storage, who knows what it would be. Anybody who wants to participate in that, who's a good person to help coordinate that?
Oh, me.
Yeah, I was quite glad.
Yeah, okay, good.
I'm
happy to do that.
And our ag development director also was helping to coordinate that before. But we have I don't know if Janelle, if we have some possible sites in Fauquier that might pan out. I don't know how ready we are to talk about those, but I think everybody took home from that meeting. It was a very brief meeting, but just the idea of, do you have any sites that might work in your localities? And I think the idea is to be as close to Route 29 as we can, so that from a distribution standpoint, people, collecting food from local farms, easy access for farmers who maybe are looking for an abattoir, food processing, meat processing, whatever it might be. So I'm hoping that maintains momentum, and we can maybe apply for some Go Virginia money. It'd be fun to actually bring some money in from Go Virginia rather than see it go everywhere else. And then last little bit of news, I think we just locked down our third bond for our middle school, and this is mostly just educational. But last year, our bond money, and we're AAA rated. Last year we were about 3.5%, and this one, as of I think yesterday, 4.05%. So the numbers are not as good as they used to be, but we're excited to do that. Janelle and I toured that school under construction an hour before this meeting, and they look like they're on track, on budget, and they'll spend all that money we just borrowed, and so things are good. That's all I got.
All right, the only thing I have is the Rappahannock Social Services on September 2nd. They're having a free 2026 Rappahannock Art of Aging Lifestyle and Wellness Expo. I attended the one last year. It's really well attended. They have, let's see, exhibitors offering health and food resources, fraud and scam prevention information, hearing assessments, caregiver resources, insurance information, housing and long-term care resources, door prizes and much more. And it's at the Washington Fire Hall, 10 Firehouse Lane from 10 until 1 on September 2nd. But I think it's well attended because it's very good information as we age. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lee.
Well, we're past 3 o'clock, Madam Chair, so I don't think I have anything. No, to just get everybody, welcome to the new members. My name is David Lee with Culpeper County Board of Supervisors. The big news, we have hired a new county administrator, much to the delight of some citizens and to the angst of many other citizens. But his name is Thomas Hutka. And he most recently was employed with Greene County in charge of their newly formed water and sewer operation out there. He has a vast wealth of experience with local government positions, leadership positions all over the country, really, Florida, Michigan, and all points in between. So we're really excited, very excited for him to get started because we've been in this kind of awkward transition period with our interim county administrator who's doing a fantastic job, a young guy named Shane McCrum. But Mr. Huck begins on September the 1st, which is next Tuesday, which is our September board meeting night. So everybody gets to meet him. He'll hit the ground running, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Yep.
One thing, and forgive me for not mentioning, it meant more local until I read their obituary. I did not realize they served as chair, but former board of supervisor Jim Arrington from Madison County passed away recently. And I did not realize he was a prior chair, and I think 12 years on this commission.
Yeah, served on the commission 2000 to 2012, was chair, and I think 2006. So about the time I was hired, he was chair. But I was deputy and vice chair, but he was, again, that was 5 or 6 years that I worked here with him, and you could just, somebody that knew the region and had a perspective that people around the table really valued hearing, and certainly a good leader for the commission at the time.
Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.